Well, happy Monday. We're going to talk more about the heart of God, and we're going to look at Psalm 84. It's one of my kind of a psalm that I used to sing the song to back when I was a singer. It's about how lovely are your dwelling, O Lord of hosts, and it's Psalm 84. And I want to talk to you about that psalm, and I want to kind of break it down into 3 segments for you, and there'll be notes so that you can continue the conversation to use this in your group time with your COVID cluster, maybe on Zoom or some other way. How lovely is your dwelling place, the Lord of armies. How I long and yearn for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Even the sparrow and the swallow a nest for herself, where she places her young near your altars. Lord of armies, my King and my God, how happy are those who reside in your house, who praise you continually. Now, this is kind of amazing, and I'm just going to stop there, that living in the presence of God really is the place that you want to be. To literally be in a conscious presence of God. Now, I was reading a lot of commentaries about this, and one old boy said this just shows you how you need to go to church, and you need to be in the church building. And what that's called is cathedralism. That's a heresy that was promoted during the Middle Ages. It said you had to go to the church building in order to have a relationship with God. There you got the sacraments. That's the things that made you right. You did your penance. That's the things you paid your penalty for your sin. You had to go to the church, and we developed a heresy around a building instead of the presence of God in the people of God, which is the church. The psalmist here was writing about the temple, but he was writing about living in the visceral presence of God. He said the sparrow has a nest, the swallow has a place to lay her head. And I do too. It's in the presence of God. Jesus goes on to say more about this psalm in John 14. He said, let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you. And what God's doing to us is saying, your dwelling is not in a building, but is in the presence of God. The church is not in a building. It's the people of God. Whether we're gathered online, or whether we gather in homes, or whether we gather in a building, it's the church of God brought together in the community of God. Here's the second thing. Our joy comes from the Lord. Now, Brian, who does our video work, he and I were talking earlier today, and I told him that as I was preparing for this, I discovered something I'd never seen before. And I want to read this to you and tell you what I discovered. Happy are the people whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on a pilgrimage as they pass through the valley of Baca. They make it a source of spring water. Even the autumn rain will cover it with blessings. They go from strength to strength. Each appears before God in Zion. Now, some theologians think that he's talking about making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem for one of the festivals. And that may be the context, because this is one of the sons of Korah who wrote this, who was a priest who would go to Jerusalem and participate in these temple gatherings, and that may be the source of how lovely is your dwelling. But because the temple was impressive, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But there's something deeper here that I want you to see. So, I'm kind of inquisitive guy. I want to make sure I do my homework. So I kind of started searching the Valley of Baca, B-A-C-A, Baca. Now, it almost sounds like boca, which means, mouth, but in Spanish, in fact, it has its root in Latin, but it doesn't mean that. And I looked for the Valley of Baca. I looked all over Israeli geography, and you know what? I couldn't find it, because it doesn't mean a physical location. It means this. Get this. It means the Valley of Difficulties. They pass through the Valley of Difficulties. They make it the source of spring water. Even the autumn rain will cover it with blessings. Your difficulties will take you from strength in God to strength in God. The Valley of Baca, the valley of your difficulties, God never wastes a hurt. He takes a mess and makes a message, a misery, and makes it a ministry from strength to strength right there. I don't know if I could even comment even greater. Lord of heaven's armies, hear my prayer. Listen, God of Jacob, consider our shield, God. Look on your face of your anointed one. And he's saying, you know what? I'm going to move from strength to strength because I belong to God, and my difficulties are going to become a source of strength for me. They're going to become a covering for me, a blessing for me. Even difficulties aren't difficult for God. Wow. Let me conclude. Better is a day in the courts than 10,000 elsewhere. I would rather stand at the threshold of the house of my God than live in the tents of the wicked people. In other words, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in God's place than live in the opulence of the tent of wickedness. For the Lord is a God, is a sun and a shield. The Lord grants favor and honor. He does not withhold the good from those who live with integrity. Happy is the person who trusts in the Lord of heaven's armies. That God is better than anything. So he's saying how lovely and pleasing it is to dwell in his presence. That even when life is difficult and life is hard, God's turning it to blessing and moving me from strength to strength. And so now I know this is better. And so I'm going to live all for Jesus. The transitions of God bring the glory to him and the help to you. And I pray you will live in this truth this week as you experience the heart of God and the confidence of God. And I hope this helps.